the first thing that I would say is that you just need to always be raising money. I mean, before you have a deal, before you need the money, start raising it now. Start telling every single person you know what you're doing, overcome the imposter syndrome, and just make it happen. Make sure that everybody you know knows that you are a capital raiser and that this is what you do. And so they're not going to be surprised at some point when you say, "Hey, I have a deal. Are you interested in investing?" They're already going to expect it. They're already going to see it coming. Start marketing, start educating people. Just get yourself out there and start raising money.
What kind of marketing activities and strategies do you have for attracting new investors?
Yeah. So in the beginning, you're probably not going to have the budget to be spending on ads, but that really is one of the absolute best ways to find new investors, particularly Meta Facebook ads, especially if you have a 506c deal. You set a budget, you run some advertisements for it, you collect the leads, put them into your CRM. But in the beginning, it's going to be a lot more word of mouth. You have a network of people already, friends, family, coworkers who know you, they trust you, right? So you need to start telling them exactly what you're trying to do, exactly what kind of asset class you're going to buy, how much money you're looking to raise from them. And then you ask those people for referrals. So you start expanding your network, you start collecting leads, you start creating a database of leads, and then you have to start marketing to that database. So there's going to be email campaigns, text campaigns. You can create a lead magnet, like an ebook or something to offer specific information. You can go to a lot of networking meetups, like real estate meetups. That's a great place. I would join your local real estate investor association and go to those meetups. There's also meetup.com has a lot of local meetups. There's really an endless supply of things that you have to do, but not all of them are going to work for you. And some of them are going to work better than others. For us, Facebook ads was really the way that we were able to build a database of thousands of leads. But, for you, I would say start local, start going to places that you can meet other like-minded people who are interested in investing in real estate.
Since we've been in the business for 5 years now, what's changed from when we started to where we are today?
Yeah, well, in the beginning, we were pretty much just using Google Sheets to keep track of investors, right? We weren't really running it like a true business operation. A massive change came when we hired a marketing company and got a CRM and started actively marketing to get new investors, running ads, really targeting accredited only. Because when it comes to family and friends money, that might help you for your first deal or two, but it's not going to last forever. Oftentimes when you raise from family and friends, maybe they have 25,000, maybe they have 50,000 to invest in one deal, but that might be all their savings, and they're not going to be able to be your repeat investors who continuously invest over and over again. So a massive change came when we started running ads to get new accredited investors. And then lately, we've actually been incorporating AI into our raises, which is a very recent development. We've talked about this on a previous episode. Not everybody is ready to be talking to a robot about investing in a deal, but we actually did get some good responses, and we had it act as our sales development representative, and we had it basically answering questions that they might have via text, and I actually found it to be pretty effective.
Yeah, I think it's a great way to kind of filter kind of in the initial calls, do some screening, get some qualifications. Sometimes you get people that are not actually accredited. So it's a great way to filter through and save some time.
Absolutely. But at the end of the day, nothing beats that one-on-one person-to-person relationship. Nobody's going to invest a deal if they've never actually spoken to you. So we've probably touched on this definitely a few times in past podcasts, but in the last 5 years, how would you say our approach to partnerships and people have changed?
I think one, sometimes you get a bunch of eager people that all want to do the same thing, get into their first deal. That's probably a pretty big mistake. One, it's really hard to do and execute. So choose partners that have been in the shoes that you want to fill. I've been doing it much longer than you have, and then have a skill set that complements you. So one could be great at asset managing. Obviously buying apartments for us, you have a balance sheet net worth requirement. That's just kind of step one. But step two is who's going to asset manage? Can they do that? Have they done it? Do they have a track record? Capital raising, along with managing property, investor relations. There's all these different roles. And I think finding people that are really good at those niches is the best way. You and I both wear both hats, or a lot of hats, right? Multiple hats. And it's really hard to do well. It's just like anything else, right? You can't do everything well. So pick what you got and find partners that complement your skill sets.
Yeah. Syndication is a team sport. You can't do everything yourself, and you shouldn't try to be good at everything yourself. I think that there often are a lot of syndications where, people want to get in, it's their first deal, and they don't really know what their skill set is yet. It's maybe their first time raising money, maybe it's their first time buying an apartment complex, and, they're eager, they're green, but you don't actually know what they are or are not good at yet. So having that experience on the team of somebody with a track record is absolutely crucial.
And the biggest piece of all of that, and it's really hard to test the waters, to vet, I should say, is core values. Do you have the same core values and integrity? Everyone says they have integrity, but is there any way to vet that?
Mm.
Look into it, look into their other partnerships, even get referrals. Like, hey, do you know this person? Are they in your network? How are they a good person? All those things will boil down to, besides the skill set, how do they operate as humans? Well, I think one, just understanding that market cycles happen and you cannot count on interest rates to drop forever or even hold still. You can't have the predictability of the government controlling treasury rates. That's, I think, a lot of people were caught off guard, including us on one of our deals, right? We just talked about that. So one, making sure your deal is at least 2 points above your debt rate. So if you have a 6% interest rate, your property really needs to cash flow at least 8%. Give yourself that margin, because that spread can get quickly eaten up if you get an extra expense or taxes get reassessed and you miss the reassessment. There's so many variables, and debt is one you can actually control because you can understand what it is and go fixed rate. Like, we won't look at anything that's not fixed rate. In fact, we're not even looking at bank deals. We're trying to find seller finance deals just because it's out there. There's a lot of owners, unfortunately, that are underwater. And so they're having a hard time finding buyers. But if they can carry the paper, right, be the bank, it helps us control and really negotiate terms on our favor. And that's the way to go.
Yeah. I just want to stress that anytime a bank is involved, the deal gets so much more complicated. They will make you jump through a million loopholes. They will raise the interest rate on you at the closing table. Everything you can possibly do to avoid working with these banks, because they are going to be the only ones who make the money in the end, I promise you.
So let's talk a little bit about debt. So with interest rates where they are right now, what do you think is the best way to be approaching debt, refinancing, restructuring debt, all these kinds of things?
Yeah, it's super tricky right now. Obviously, a lot of lenders are being really conservative. So when we're looking at deals, obviously, like you mentioned before, we're really looking for seller financing if we can. It's going to be low leverage, guys. So if you're looking at a deal where before maybe you can get 70 to 75% LTV or LTC, it's going to be in the 60s. So you really need to get better at underwriting to make sure that deal pencils, like you talked about. Cap rates are high, interest rates are high. We're talking about most commercial deals are going to be in the sixes. Maybe you get something with a high five handle, but it's going to be really tight. So I think just thinking about long-term play, we are all about cash flow. So if this deal doesn't pencil at 7, 8, 9% cash flow, almost an acquisition, it's just not a buy for us.
Yeah, that's exactly right. It's very, very hard to find deals that cash flow right now with interest rates where they are. So if you can, go for the seller finance.
In the last 5 years, what have you learned about investor relationships and maintaining those?
Communication. It sounds like a cheesy answer or the cliche answer, but we, I think, have learned to be better. We haven't been great at the beginning. It's one thing, when you court the investor, talk to the investor, get them to trust you and invest with you. But then what happens after the fact, right? Are you sending out quarterly, monthly, weekly distributions or communications? That's the big key. I would say one of the things we learned is some of our projects, we were not as consistent with sending out those communications. The investors just want to know what's going on, right? They don't need to be in your business. They don't want to know the nitty gritty, but they want to know, hey, what's the high level things that are happening, and them hearing from you versus them contacting you going, hey, what's going on with this project?
Absolutely.
So yeah, that's a big piece of it. Just better communication.
And I would say that, one thing that we used to do is and we still do this, we would record quarterly video updates. And I think that was a really effective means of communicating with investors. They'd rather hear it, from your face, you talking, as opposed to just getting an email and, having to read through it and find out what's going on with the property. But it's a very different story when everything is going smooth, when they're getting their distributions every month or every quarter. Then, they're probably not going to be too inquisitive. But when things go sideways in deals, and they always do at some point, they want to know what's going on, and it's your responsibility to keep them informed. Hey guys, pardon my sweatiness, but I just want to take this moment to thank our first official sponsor of Beyond the Deal. That's right, it is going to be the Country Club Mastermind. I've recently become affiliated with this organization, and I'm a really big fan of what they do. This is a mastermind for entrepreneurs who are interested in golf. There's a huge element of golf coaching involved. We get weekly goals. The founder of the organization is a guy who almost went to the Masters, so he's really going to be able to help you with your game. But more than that, you get access to the network of like minded individuals, entrepreneurs, people who are able to help you in business. These are 6, 7, 8 figure guys who can really help you go where you're trying to get going. So if you are interested, go ahead and click the link down in the description below and learn more about how to join the country club.
Let's talk about the next question. So, in your team, what's one thing, one characteristic of a team member that you absolutely cannot permit, allow? Tell me a little bit more about that.
Yeah, this goes beyond just a team member. This is something that I try to actually look for in anybody in my life, in all my interpersonal relationships, and that is making excuses. I absolutely cannot stand it when people don't take accountability for their actions. I would so much rather somebody say, yeah, I messed up. Here's what I'm not going to do next time, and just own up to it right away than say, oh, this happened and this happened, this happened, or so and so did this. Absolutely, just 100%. The moment I start to hear an excuse, my brain's just writing that person off right away.
That's a great point, man. So taking accountability for what you're doing, even if you're gonna, not be correct, make a mistake, own up to that. It's a big piece.
Mike, let's ask you a question about culture and systems. So, how can systems help secure a company's culture, and how can systems potentially hurt it?
Yeah, it's a great question. So a couple things. Let's talk about how can it help. One, you're creating structure, right? Which means repeatability, scaling. How do you remove yourself from the business at some point? Can it be self-automated? So from a legacy standpoint, from long-term growth and scaling, you can't be the guy that does everything, right? We're all five hats. So having systems in place allows you to bring other people in, understand those systems, and start to repeat the process and dig in and really create that company now without maybe all parts of you, and maybe you can focus on something else. So that, to me, that's a help, right? That's a great way to keep people accountable, really see the growth and metrics. Where it can hurt you is if you over systematize or only rely on systems where maybe you're removing the human nature piece where, hey, this report says this. Again, I think we can use our own data when we talk about certain investors that might fit all the criteria, but maybe they're just not a good fit for our company. Maybe their core values don't align with ours. That's a human touch, right? We need that human piece to say, hey, this isn't a good fit. Let's go a different route.
This is the classic fine line between startup culture and corporate culture, right? Because the bigger a company gets, the more systems they need in place, but also the more superfluous tasks they can create for people. We've actually experienced this recently with our property management company getting bought out by a much, much larger property management company, and the process has not been smooth. Previously, our employee, our property manager, had the freedom to kind of do whatever she needed to do to get what needed to be done for our assets. Now she's having to spend thousands of hours in superfluous meetings, writing reports, little trainings that they're trying to make us pay for, all sorts of little things that have actually contributed to hurting the productivity of our assets.
Yeah, that's a good point. The administrative reports, right? I need a report done. I need this. That is a issue, a uniform issue across all companies, large corporations, small businesses like ours, that can really hinder the growth and performance. And you take a person that we have, you're talking about our PM, who's, I would say, a little old school, not great at reports, but can roll up her sleeves and go, for us, lease units. And if she's got to sit in the office and take care of reports, she's not taking care of tenants. She's not able to drive revenue, which again impacts the bottom line. I think the common thread there was understanding the current state. So, meaning if you are a new leader coming into a new space, before you start enacting changes and start demanding things to move a different way, even though those are probably the right things, the way to get buy-in from your existing team is really to put yourself in their shoes, shadow them, spend 3 months understanding the business, meaning what do they do, how do they do it. And I think one of the worst things that you could say is, back in my company, this is what we did, right? It's just a great way to get people to turn off and not be interested in what you're doing. But once they see you really trying to learn from them, get feedback and understand, and then start to propose maybe tiny changes, they start to give you that trust. And then once you have their trust, then you can go, right?
Yeah. I think also, as any organization scales, at some point your time is the bottleneck, right? So Maybe you have been the manager of marketing, but now you've got 20 people underneath you, and there needs to be at least one more level in between them. So you can manage that one person, or you can manage two people, and then those two people can go manage another 10 people.
That's right.
Right. So you just kind of need to think about how to scale and how to delegate your time effectively.
Yeah. And it goes back to that first question we brought in was, what are the things that you're maybe not so good at? Right.
Right.
So we'll take some of that self-assessment to say, I am terrible at accounting. I need an accountant manager, right, to come in and run our books and do a better job and keep us, profitable and protected.
Hey, Mike, how do you make sure that your team stays motivated when money isn't necessarily the main driving force?
Yeah, this is great, man. I think about team events and building camaraderie so that there's a greater cause. So understanding people's goals, right? You talked about, hey, business drives revenue and profits, and it's not always about money. So what can you do to keep the team motivated and keep them moving? I think it's really getting them together, go do something that's outside the business. Right now we're golfing, which is somewhat intertwined to the business,
Yeah.
but it's still, we're having fun, right? Getting to know each other. If you got a new team or you're building, just long-term growth, get outside, find something that you guys are all passionate about and go do that. And don't talk about work, and spend a day or two just doing that. You'll start to build trust with those people. They'll internally be motivated to do more for your company and for the company than it would be if you just said, hey, let's just always focus on business. Too many of the retreats that we went to, we always had to intertwine some business. I totally disagree with that. I think if you're going to do it, go have fun. Don't talk about work. Have a great time, and you'll build trust and camaraderie. And I think that leads to motivation down the road.
Yeah. There's a really, really good book called So Good They Can't Ignore You. And in the first chapter of that book, he actually talks a lot about workplace satisfaction and how it has very little to do with being passionate about your work, and how it has so much more to do with the social structures, the autonomy, and your coworkers. You want it to be a place where they feel safe, they feel respected, they want to be there every day. It doesn't mean they have to be passionate about accounting, right? But they enjoy going there every single day.
Awesome.
And I'll zoom out for a second and talk about the tenant experience. Tenants have a lot of choices these days. As we talked about earlier on, there's a lot of vacancy in the marketplace. So really focusing on the customer experience. We call it renewals in the multifamily world, right? Because basically every 6 to 12 months, these guys have an opportunity to leave. And so what can we do to keep them in place? What are some amenities that maybe we need to offer? What are some just conversations? Our PM in New Mexico is amazing, right? She's always focusing on what does that tenant need? And sometimes it's as simple as, we can raise the rent $50, but that tenant really could use a new ceiling fan or some new blinds. What does that cost us? $50, right? So just in 1 month, we're already ahead, and it saves us a ton of time. If that tenant decides to move out, we're spending a few $1,000s, right? At least to be able to clean that unit up, possibly have to put carpet down. So now that tenant stays, we get continued income, slightly higher, and we have a happy tenant.
Keeping your tenants happy, providing a really good tenant experience is everything in the NOI game.